welcome. This is an economics of obesity special session on sugar taxes. We actually only have one presenter right now. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Arantxa Conchera, who is going to talk about implications of sugar tax. Would you like to share your screen, Arantxa?
Sure. Thank you, Alison, for introducing me. Can you see?
Yes.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm very glad that you all are here. I'm going to present, the title of the presentation is different from the title that is in the program because we changed it. So the title is Changes in Sugar Sweetened Beverages Purchases Across the Price Distribution After Implementation of a Tax. And I'm glad to see that Juan Carlos, who is a co-author, the first author of this manuscript, and Shu Wen are here with me. So we can share questions. So just as a background for all of you who don't know, in 2014, Mexico implemented a 1 peso per liter tax to all beverages with added sugar. And that's approximately about an increase in prices of 10%. And there have been several studies evaluating the tax. In general, the studies have found that there have been reductions in SSB purchases or sales after the tax was implemented, and that the reductions have been higher for low SES and high consumers. There is something particular in Mexico and probably in other countries that we have a large variation in prices of SSBs that go from 4 to 16 pesos per liter. So with these big variation, the tax that we have, it's a tax to volume. That is incentivizes the reduction of this gap, but it might not be enough. So there's one study looking at differential effects of a tax across the price distribution, and this is from Barbados, who implemented a tax, an ad valorem tax of 10% to SSBs. And what they found is an overall reduction of 4.3% in sales of these beverages, and 2.6% for low price, so a lower reduction for low price beverages, and 14.4% for high price beverages. And in contrast, they found an increase in those beverages who are in the middle price of 4.3%. So our question was that the objective of our study was to estimate changes in household purchases of tax SSBs by tertiles of SSB prices, so low, middle, and high prices before and after the implementation of a 1 peso per liter tax in 2014. So really our hypothesis was that given the large variation in prices, that we would find that people would switch to cheaper prices, which is not the case, and I'm going to show you the results. So in the methods, what we did is we used a simple linear regression on monthly SSB purchases. That's in milliliters per capita per day. And our most important variable is a dummy, a post-tax dummy, which is 1 if it's 2014 or 15, 0 if it's before the tax was implemented. And what we did is we stratified by price tertile. So the price tertiles, based on the study that I mentioned from Barbados, we were inspired by that paper. And what we did is that we first estimated a single real unit value, so that's the price, for each combination, all over the time, across the time, this unit value for each combination of an SSB brand and package size. And unit values were derived based on expenditures over quantity purchased. And we have more than 1,000 unique combinations that are not necessarily repeated all over the time. But this is what we had. So we created these unit values. And the analysis is aggregated at the city, month, and tertile level. So we are not using household purchase level. We have the data is aggregated at the city, month, tertile level. So we adjusted the models for variables that can be associated with purchases of beverages. So that's seasonality, that we know that the volume purchase change over time. So we have quarterly season fixed effects and city fixed effects, and a linear trend, which is account for month and year. And then, because we don't have an experimental design, we adjusted the models for contextual variables that can be associated with purchases of SSBs. So this is labor income, unemployment rate, and consumer price index. So in addition to that, we conducted sensitivity analysis where we added a variable that is the percent of products of beverages within each price tertile with a package size that is larger than 1 liter. And the reason is that in Mexico, probably in other countries, these big package size beverages are relatively low in price. So in relative terms. So in case people would switch to these big package sizes, we adjusted the models for that. And we use data from Nielsen, which is a private company who collects data on households. And this is a panel of households we have monthly information from 2012 to 2015 for about 6,000 households in 54 urban cities in Mexico. So let me show you the results. So this is just a graph that shows the different tertiles. So you can see in blue, we have and just to show you the price for each tertile. And I'm sorry. So we have the different tertiles. So we have a low price, which is about 7 pesos per liter. Then the red one, which is the middle price, is close to 10, about 9 pesos per liter. And then the tertile with the high price beverages, SSBs, which is around 16 pesos per liter. So this graph doesn't show changes after the tax was implemented. It's just to show you these tertiles. Then let me show you this table with the descriptives of the analytical sample. And you can see what we have is SSB purchases in milliliters per capita per day. We have the mean for the different tertiles of prices before and after the implementation of the tax, the difference, and then if the difference is statistically significant. And so first, what you can see is that most of the purchases are in the low SSB price tertile. Most of them, so that's about 59%. Then comes the middle SSB prices, and then very few households purchase in the high SSB price tertile. For all of them, just without any adjustment, without doing any models, just in descriptive statistics. So what you can see is that there was a reduction in purchases for all of them, statistically significant after the implementation of the tax. Then you can see it's just descriptive, our contextual variables, the consumer price index, the per capita labor income, and the unemployment rate over time. And so finally, this table shows the results of the stratified models. So this is linear regression for each of the tertile of prices. And model one has all variables except the variable that I talked about, which is the percent of products that of beverages that are larger than 1 liter, and model 2 includes that variable. And we have these models stratified by by price tertile. And the first row is what you need to look at. So the first one is that we found for the low price tertile that purchases after the tax was implemented, purchases increased 3.3 milliliters per capita per day, but that was not significant. In contrast, we found a reduction of 14.3 milliliters per capita per day for beverages that are in the middle price tertile. And the coefficient is slightly lower if we adjust for this variable thing, the percent of products with larger packet sizes. So it's a reduction of 11.1 milliliters per capita per day. And then for the high price tertile, we see an increase, but it's not statistically significant. Okay, so these are the results. And so what we found is a significant reduction between 11.1 and 14.3 milliliters per capita per day in the middle price tertile. We didn't find any statistically significant change for low and high price. Now, we think that changes in SSB purchases in the tails of the distribution were unlikely. And so for the low price, we think that we're not showing that, but we know that in this tertile, we had the largest price increase. So it's unlikely that changes in purchases, that people would switch to low price beverages. And also because we have that purchases already account for 59% of total purchases, we think that there's no more room for that they already, probably people wouldn't like to switch to low price beverages because they are already a high percent of people who buy them. And in contrast, for the high price beverages that account for 10% for all purchases, there's little room for additional reductions because it's a luxury good and they wouldn't change. Our results are different compared to what we found for Barbados, but we think also that the countries are very different and we have a very different tax design. And so there are two main limitations of the study. One is that our study is representative of urban areas only. 63% of the population lives in urban areas, and they represent 75% of overall food and beverage expenditures. And of course, this is a before and after analysis. We can obtain causality, but we included contextual factors that can be associated with changes in purchases over time. And then the strengths is that we have a very rich data set. We have a very disaggregated level of products, of beverages. And this is the first study that assesses how SSB purchases change by beverage price in Mexico after the tax was implemented. And we think that in terms of the policy implications, that the current tax was ineffective to reduce purchases across the full price distribution. So it may be the case that the recommendation is to increase the tax, but also to think about a redesign of the tax towards probably a sugar density tax similar to the UK or South Africa, or in addition to the one that we have. Thank you. So this is all I had to present.
Thank you so much, Arantxa. Can I open up the meeting for questions? So you can either put your questions in the chat, or we don't have a massive audience here. You can also just put the hands up, or you can just unmute yourself and ask a question of Arantxa, if anybody would like to start. Yeah, thanks, John.
Hi, Arantxa. Thank you very much for presenting. It's really interesting work, and you've been, one of the leaders in this area for a long time. So it's really neat to hear you present firsthand. So I apologize, I joined a little late, so you might have already covered this, but there's the, I know the Mexican government was enacting other policies around the same time that were intended to change people's behavior, right around like clean water availability and marketing restrictions. And so to what extent are you able to sort of attribute the changes you see to the tax specifically, as opposed to some of these other things?
Yeah, thank you. So glad to see you, John. So one of the, of course, the marketing restricted to children was implemented in June 2014. So really, we are not able to disentangle the effect from that. Otherwise, other policies that were there before didn't change. And in October 2020, and so that's not a problem for a study, there was this front of pack labeling that was approved and implemented in Mexico. So yes, only the marketing, which is, the papers have found that there was compliance with marketing to children, but it was pretty limited in terms of the programs, because children see programs in other hours, very late, or other programs that should be covered. But yeah, we cannot distinguish from that. Thank you, John.
Does anybody else? David, would you like to go ahead with your question?
Yes, hi. Thanks for your presentation. I am David Lugo Palacios, Assistant Professor in Health Economics at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. Well, as a Mexican, I found the presentation really interesting. Well, and I also have or share the same comment by John, saying that it would be difficult perhaps to disentangle on top of all the policies that, or the changes that John mentioned. There was also this public health initiative, not the Mídete, that was focused for people to change lifestyle behavior. So that would be difficult to disentangle, yes. But I also was thinking that, I mean, given that you have a panel of data, and we're saying it's of course very difficult, very challenging to assess the causality, but maybe you can do maybe I think would be exploited the panel data a bit more, maybe with some interrupted time series approach. I mean, of course, it depends really on the variables that you have, and causality measures might still be, we should be cautious about the potential results you might have. But maybe I think that having such a rich panel, maybe you can exploit it a little bit better. I just want to know if you have some plans to do it in the future, or
yeah. Nice to meet you, David. Thank you for your comments. So we actually tried interrupted time series analysis. I don't remember how many observations we had, but I think there were not enough to conduct the IHEA models. Juan Carlos can talk a little bit more about that. And the real results were really different. The one thing that we were confident of our results is that because we have a reduction only in the middle price tertile of 14 milliliters per capita. This is very similar if we compare with what we found with the same data set for the overall changes in SSB purchases after the tax was implemented. I don't know, Juan Carlos, if you want to compliment. Alison, if that's okay.
Of course, absolutely.
Hey everyone. Yeah, so hey David, thank you so much for your comments. Yeah, we tried the interrupted time series analysis, and yeah, so we had like, it is because we were using monthly data. We had 24 months before and after the tax implementation. And even though we had those number of observations of months, still in general, it was noisy. The estimates, and because what Arantxa said, so we think like the current model specification, it was the one that it was, let's say, less subject to that noise.
Yeah, and a relatively low sample size for time series.
Thank you. Marcos, you have a question.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm Marcos Dominguez. I'm also from Mexico, and I'm doing my PhD in the Wageningen University in the Netherlands. And I'm wondering, to put the results into perspective, that's something I usually see in these studies about the sugar tax. How many calories there are in these 14 milliliters per day? That's one question. And the other, just to have a better idea about the products that we have found this reduction in the consumption. Can you give a few examples of these middle price tertile products? Which type of beverages or examples are in that category? Thanks.
Hi, Marcos. Thanks for your questions. I haven't done any estimation for calories. I don't know, Shu Wen, if you have a better idea of how much that would be. We did it for the other paper. I don't remember exactly. And I don't know what beverages, because I didn't see the specific brands for those who are in the middle price. Of course, Coca-Cola is not there because these are high price, I think, but Juan Carlos would know better about that if he remembers. I don't know, Shu Wen, if you know about the calories. Yeah, so that's one thing, is that we are not allowed to provide the specifics of the product because this is part of our contract with Nielsen. That's true. Thank you, Shu Wen. We would need to make the estimation, a rough estimation for how much calories that is. I understand that it is important to have an idea of how much 14 milliliters per day per capita they are. I agree.
Just While we're waiting to see if there are any more questions, this is not my area of expertise, but I noticed, so if I understand correctly, you controlled for unemployment and income, but did you look at change in purchase behavior within income tertiles or within income? Is that something that might be interesting?
Because we have aggregated data, we don't have the data at the household level. So we didn't look at how this was heterogeneous among as a socioeconomic level. We don't have income in the data set, but we do have SES. So really, we didn't do the analysis using that because we don't have household data. We have aggregated data at the city month tertile level.
Sure. Yeah. There's some comments. Xu Wang, would you like to ask your question, or there's some comments there, or would you like me to read that out?
Yeah, it wasn't really a question. It was more of a response to the questions asked before. You know, and essentially that, you know, in our earlier work too with Arantxa, yeah, the reductions in calories are not that large, and a lot of it has to do with a few things, right? The design of the tax, it was a volumetric tax. It wasn't designed specifically on the sugar content. So you may, you know, while there's revenue generated from this tax, you don't necessarily have the reductions in sugar and calories that maybe should be the key objective instead. And you know, the level of the tax, of course, also would have implications for how much of a reduction that might be, right? So if it was designed as a higher tax, we might have seen larger reductions in volume and therefore kcals. So, and then the other issue, of course, is that I think given the issue, you know, obesity and diabetes prevalence in Mexico, in order to have change that will be meaningfully address these chronic diseases that developed over many, many years, there would be a need for more concerted policies that work well together. So a single policy alone is not going to be enough to make a dent on these, you know, health issues that took decades to develop.
Thank you. David, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you. Thank you again. Well, I think there's, what the way I see it is there are two ways of assessing the success of a tax, isn't it? One is, of a tax, like a sin tax. You know? One is the extent to which the tax reduces the consumption of the good you want to prevent society to consume, but also the other way of seeing it is the revenue, the tax revenue. And in that sense, I think the tax might have been very successful in Mexico, especially given that the low changes in purchases, isn't it? And given that, if I understand correctly, Arantxa, you said there was like a 10%, the tax was equivalent to a 10% change across the different prices. So, I mean, I know that this has been the discussion in Mexico that is pretty much a deadlock, know that we cannot earmark taxes in Mexico for a specific like health issues. So maybe perhaps complementing a bit what Xu Wang was saying, maybe the policy needs to be that one. And that's, I mean, apart from raising taxes, it's just continue pushing for that. If from the from central government there are not going to be more resources for this type of resources, then at least let's try to earmark these sin taxes for help.
Yeah. Can I say something, Alison?
Absolutely.
Thank you. That's a very interesting question, David. So first, I think, I don't know if we can say that a tax that is about a 10% increase in price, that the reduction in purchases have been low, because it really depends on the study. We found for the first 2 years after the tax was implemented that the reduction was 7.6% on average, but it was lower for the poorest, because so that's what you would expect, and higher for those who consume more. But of course, there are other studies, and you can attend tomorrow's session, because Juan Carlos found a larger increase, reduction, and there's another study using the same data set, but that goes till 2016, I guess, and they found higher reductions. So I'm not sure if we can say that it's lower. Our results of 7.6 are lower compared to what you would expect based on price elasticities, of course, because we found price elasticities that the SSB were price elastic around 11, right? That we would expect a reduction of 11% with a 10% increase in price. But I think that it's low compared to what the country needs, of course, and that it has to be accompanied with other policies, of course, and maybe the front of pack labeling would be interesting, and maybe a tax redesign. So I think this is just a very nice discussion we can have about that.
Okay, well, we have been fortunate in having a little bit longer to discuss this paper, because we don't have any other presenters for this session. But unless there's any other burning questions, I'd just like to thank Arantxa for the presentation, and to thank everybody for your discussion, and hope that we see you in other sessions later today.